to first Numbers chapter 13. Numbers chapter 13. And I'm going to read to you a fair amount of context, actually a couple of chapters here, to introduce the topic tonight. And then I'll let you know where I'm going with this. Thank you for being faithful to the house of the Lord tonight. And we're glad that you're here. Numbers chapter 13. The Lord now said to Moses, "Send out men to explore the land of Canaan, the land I am giving to the Israelites. Send one leader from each of the 12 ancestral tribes." So Moses did as the Lord commanded him. He sent out 12 men, all tribal leaders of Israel, from their camp in the wilderness of Paran. These were the tribes and the names of their leaders. From Reuben, Shammua, son of Zakur. From Simeon, Shaphat, son of Hori. From Judah, Caleb, son of Jephunneh. From Issachar, Igal, son of Joseph. From Ephraim, Hoshea, son of Nun, or Joshua, son of Nun, is another way to recognize that. From Benjamin, Palti, son of Raphu. From Zebulun, Gadiel, son of Sodi. From Manasseh, son of Joseph, Gadi, son of Susi. From Dan, Amiel, son of Gemali. From Asher, Sethur, son of Michael. From Naphtali, Napi, son of Voshi. And from Gad, Geuel, son of Maki. And if I got any of those wrong, please forgive me. They're a little foreign to me. These are the names of the men Moses sent out to explore the land. Moses called Hoshea, or Joshua, son of Nun, by the name Joshua. Moses gave the men these instructions as he sent them out to explore the land. Go north through the Negev into the hill country. See what the land is like, and find out whether the people living there are strong or weak, few or many. See what kind of land they live in. Is it good or bad? Do their towns have walls, or are they unprotected like open camps? Is the soil fertile or poor? Are there many trees? Do your best to bring back samples of the crops that you see. It happened to be the season for harvesting the first ripe grapes. So they went up and explored the land from the wilderness of Zin as far as Rehob, near Lebo Hamath. Going north, they passed through the Negev and arrived at Hebron, where Ahiman, Shishai, and Talmai, all descendants of Anak, lived. The ancient town of Hebron was founded 7 years before the Egyptian city of Zoan. When they came to the valley of Eshcol, they cut down a branch with a single cluster of grapes, so large that it took 2 of them to carry it on a pole between them. Now that's a set of grapes. What are you having for dinner, dear? 1 grape. Anyway, they also brought back samples of the pomegranates and figs. That place was called the Valley of Eshcol, which means cluster, because of the cluster of grapes the Israelite men cut there. After exploring the land for 40 days, the men returned to Moses, Aaron, and the whole community of Israel at Kadesh in the wilderness of Paran. They reported to the whole community what they had seen and showed them the fruit they had taken from the land. This was their report to Moses, quote, "We entered the land you sent us to explore, and it is indeed a bountiful country, a land flowing with milk and honey," a phrase from that time period meaning a bountiful land. "Here is the kind of fruit it produces. But the people living there are powerful, and their towns are large and fortified. We even saw giants there, the descendants of Anak. The Amalekites live in the Negev, And the Hittites, Jebusites, and Amorites live in the hill country. The Canaanites live along the coast of the Mediterranean Sea and along the Jordan Valley. But Caleb tried to quiet the people as they stood before Moses. "Let's go at once to take the land," he said. "We can certainly conquer it." But the other men who had explored the land with him disagreed. "We can't go up against them. They are stronger than we are." So they spread this bad report about the land among the Israelites. Quote, "The land we traveled through and explored will devour anyone who goes to live there. All the people we saw were huge. We even saw giants there, the descendants of Anak. Next to them, we felt like grasshoppers." And that's what they thought too. Chapter 14 goes on with the narrative and says, "Then the whole community began weeping aloud, and they cried all night. Their voices rose in a great chorus of protest against Moses and Aaron. 'If only we had died in Egypt, or even here in the wilderness,' they complained. 'Why is the Lord taking us to this country only to have us die in battle? Our wives and our little ones will be carried off as plunder. Wouldn't it be better for us to return to Egypt?' Then they plotted among themselves, 'Let's choose a new leader and go back to Egypt.' Then Moses and Aaron fell face down on the ground before the whole community of Israel. Two of the men who had explored the land, Joshua, son of Nun, and Caleb, son of Jephunneh, tore their clothing. They said to all the people of Israel, 'The land we traveled through and explored is a wonderful land. And if the Lord is pleased with us, He will bring us safely into that land and give it to us. It is a rich land, flowing with milk and honey. Do not rebel against the Lord, and don't be afraid of the people of the land. They are only helpless prey to us. They have no protection, but the Lord is with us. Don't be afraid of them.' But the whole community began to talk about stoning Joshua and Caleb. Then the glorious presence of the Lord appeared to all the Israelites at the tabernacle. And the Lord said to Moses, 'How long will this people treat me with contempt? Will they never believe me, even after all the miraculous signs I have done among them? I will disown them, and I will destroy them with a plague. Then I will make you into a nation greater and mightier than they are.' But Moses objected. 'What will the Egyptians think when they hear about it?' he asked the Lord. 'They know full well the power you displayed in rescuing your people from Egypt. Now, if you destroy them, the Egyptians will send a report to the inhabitants of this land, who have already heard that you live among your people. They know, Lord, that you have appeared to your people face to face, and that your pillar of cloud hovers over them. They know that you go before them in the pillar of cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night. Now, if you slaughter all these people with a single blow, the nations that have heard of your fame will say, the Lord was not able to bring them into the land He swore to give them, so He killed them in the wilderness. Please, Lord,' Moses says, 'prove that your power is as great as you claimed. For you said, the Lord is slow to anger and filled with unfailing love, forgiving every kind of sin and rebellion. But He does not excuse the guilty. He lays the sins of the parents upon their children. The entire family is affected, even children in the third and the fourth generations. In keeping with your magnificent, unfailing love, please pardon the sins of this people, just as you have forgiven them ever since they left Egypt.' Then the Lord said, 'I will pardon them as you have requested, but as surely as I live, and as surely as the earth is filled with the Lord's glory, not one of these people will ever enter that land. They have all seen my glorious presence, and the miraculous signs I performed both in Egypt and in the wilderness. But again and again they have tested me by refusing to listen to my voice. They will never even see the land I swore to give to their ancestors. None of those who have treated me with contempt will ever see it. But my servant Caleb has a different attitude than the others have. But my servant Caleb has a different attitude than the others have. He has remained loyal to me, so I will bring him into the land he explored. His descendants will possess their full share of that land. Now turn around and don't go toward the land where the Amalekites and the Canaanites live. Tomorrow you must set out for the wilderness in the direction of the Red Sea. Then the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, how long must I put up with this wicked community and its complaints about me? Yes, I have heard the complaints the Israelites are making against me. Now tell them this: as surely as I live, declares the Lord, I will do to you the very things I heard you say. You will drop dead in this wilderness. Because you complained against me, every one of you who is 20 years old or older and was included in the registration will die. You will not enter and occupy the land I swore to give you. The only exceptions will be Caleb, son of Jephunneh, and Joshua, son of Nun. You said your children would be carried off as plunder. Well, I will bring them safely into the land, and they will enjoy what you have despised. But as for you, you will drop dead in this wilderness, and your children will be like shepherds wandering in the wilderness for 40 years. In this way they will pay for your faithlessness until the last of you lies dead in the wilderness. Because your men explored the land for 40 days, you must wander in the wilderness for 40 years, a year for each day, suffering the consequences of your sins. Then you will discover what it is like to have me for an enemy. I, the Lord, have spoken. I will certainly do these things to every member of the community who has conspired against me. They will be destroyed here in this wilderness, and here they will die. The 10 men Moses had sent to explore the land, the ones who incited rebellion against the Lord with their bad report, were struck dead with a plague before the Lord. Of the 12 who had explored the land, only Joshua and Caleb remained alive. When Moses reported the Lord's words to all the Israelites, the people were filled with grief. Then they got up early the next morning, went to the top of the range of hills. Let's go, they said. We realize we have sinned, but now we are ready to enter the land the Lord has promised us. But Moses said, why are you now disobeying the Lord's orders to return to the wilderness? It won't work. Do not go up into the land now. You will only be crushed by your enemies, because the Lord is not with you. When you face the Amalekites and the Canaanites in battle, you will be slaughtered. The Lord will abandon you because you have abandoned the Lord. But the people defiantly pushed ahead toward the hill country, even though neither Moses nor the ark of the Lord's covenant left the camp. Then the Amalekites and the Canaanites who lived in those hills came down and attacked them and chased them back as far as Hormah. Now, these 2 chapters tell us an interesting story. They tell us a story that I believe is encapsulated in the statement in verse 24 of chapter 14. But my servant Caleb has a different attitude than the others have. An attitude is how you look at things. An attitude has nothing to do with the circumstances. It doesn't change the circumstances. An attitude simply has impact on how you look at those same circumstances. And tonight I want for you to consider with me through this story and another passage we'll look at in a minute. Obstacle or opportunity? obstacle or opportunity? The 10 who got struck with a plague and who swayed all of Israel looked at the same set of circumstances Caleb and Joshua looked at. They helped carry the fruit back out of the land. They had seen the cities. They had seen the trees. They had seen the land. But all they saw were the obstacles. They saw the giants. They saw the walls. All they saw were obstacles. But Caleb and Joshua had a different attitude. They said, we see the walls. We see the giants. But we also see the land. This is an opportunity. Y'all are looking at the problems, and we're looking at the blessings. You all are looking at what can go wrong, and we're looking at what can go right. Obstacles or opportunities. Today I was taking Arash and Meg around today, and we did a drive around through Wilmington, and we then went up into Philadelphia. And what I do with folks when they come into town is I go get lost in Philly. That's literally what I do. I drive up there, and I just get lost. I don't pay any attention to where I'm going. I just kind of start turning, and I get to look at the city. And it's really, actually, Philly's not too hard. You can find your way out of Philly pretty easy. It's not hard. You got some really big skyscrapers to kind of orient yourself off of. And so if you keep heading towards them, you can figure out the main big streets, one of which being Broad Street, and you can get your way out of town. You can get in and you can get out. And so we spent, I don't know, probably 3 hours driving around through Philly today. Was it 4? Okay. Maybe it was 5. I don't know. But it was a long time. I took them up there. We went up, and we saw Temple. We got out and went and saw a couple people there that I knew, and they wanted to meet. But we drove all over town there. We got done with that drive, and we were tired of sitting in the car. We spent all afternoon in there. And we started out on the right foot. We went and had a Philly cheesesteak, and that was good. And now they're spoiled. They can't ever eat Philly cheesesteak someplace else because they now know what Pat's King of Steaks is really like. I didn't go to Geno's this time. Geno's was across the street. It was cold out there, man. We ate them in the car. We didn't sit on no benches. It was freezing. They got to see what Philly is like when I ordered my Philly cheesesteak with provolone. And the next one, they stepped up to the window. The guy said they started to hesitate about what cheese, and he says, you want Cheese Whiz. That's the best kind of sandwich, not that one. I said, there you go. That's Philly for you. Had no problem yelling at me, telling me I'd picked the wrong sandwich, even though he was the one that offered to make it. So anyway, Philly's a great place. Lots of fun people. But as we drove around, we saw some really nice places. Wow, some nice houses. And we saw some rough places. We went through some projects, and we went through some areas that were in between, and we drove through the center city, and we saw these massive buildings, and we saw these massive city buildings, and we saw the Rocky statue down at the foot of the steps, and we did not get out and run up to the footsteps. It was way too cold. And so we went all around this city. Do you realize that most people who come east, when they step into Philadelphia, they see the obstacles? That's what they see. I see the same city. We were looking at the same city. Arash, Meg, and I, we were driving down the same streets. And by the way, this sermon is not to Arash and Meg. I mean, it may include them, but it is not to them. It is to us. But we were looking at the same city. But, Brother Brian, when I look at that city, I do not see obstacles. I see opportunity. I see a city that is teeming with hundreds of thousands and millions of people who need to hear the gospel. I see the opportunity to share that gospel with an amazing city. Same set of circumstances, but your attitude has a lot to do with how you see it. Some of you within your life, you need to get an attitude correction. God's put His hand on your life and said, I'd like to do something with your life, and you're going, oh my goodness. That means that I can't do what I want to do. That means I can't do this. That means I can't do that. And you see all the obstacles. And by the way, the reason I can call you out on that is because I once had your attitude. I once looked at life that way. When I felt the call of God upon my life, I was mad because I wasn't going to be able to live in $1 million home. I was mad because I wasn't going to be able to drive a Mercedes or a Lexus. I was mad because I wasn't going to be able to be selfish and do what I wanted to do. I saw the obstacles. I didn't see the opportunities. And by the way, the pauses tonight are to let it marinate. I haven't lost my words, and I haven't lost where I'm going. I'm letting you sit in the stew a little bit. What's your attitude? How are you looking at this? You have sickness within your body. What are you looking at it as? Obstacle? If only God would take this away? Or is it an opportunity? The Christian, I would submit to you tonight, needs to have the shared characteristic with Caleb, that he had a different attitude than the rest. Where everybody else saw obstacles, because Caleb knew his God, he saw opportunities. He said, sure, I see those walls. Absolutely, I'm not unaware of those children of Anak who are giants. They're big fellers. But the cool thing about giants is once you get them down, they make a bigger boom than the rest. The cool part about walled cities is once you've scaled the walls and taken control of the cities, they're now your walled cities. The cool part about a land that is worth fighting for is once you win it, you get the bounty. See, Caleb just could not see the obstacles because his vision was dominated by the opportunities. As Christians, we need to see in every aspect of our walk with God and our life, we need to be looking for the opportunities. You say, well, preacher, I'm not an optimistic person. Do you realize who controls that attitude? Well, preacher, you don't understand how scared I get. Sure I do. I'm terrified about every other day. I know you don't see it. I don't come and lay it all over the pulpit. But about every other day, I look around and go, God, how in heaven's name is this going to happen? How are we going to do this? Because I don't have my $1 million home. By the way, that was my starter home. That wasn't where I was going to stay. I know y'all like to chuckle at me, but some of you that have worked with me, you actually believe me when I talk like that. You understand the intensity with which I live life. I ain't playing. I wasn't playing when I wanted to do it my way, and I'm not playing now that I'm doing it God's way. I don't have my $1 million home. I'm not driving a Lexus or a Mercedes, mainly because I don't want to pay that much money for a car. Too much money. Goodness. Got other things to do with that money. I don't have all of these things that I, in my carnal mind, wanted. So I want to see God's will done. I want to see God's will come to pass. I want to be fruitful within the kingdom. And there are times when I look at what it is that's in front of me, when I look at the walls, when I look at the giants, when I look at all of those things, I see the obstacles. But do you know what? I have control over whether I look at the obstacles or whether I look at the opportunities. And what I choose is a reflection of my attitude. And most importantly, it's a reflection of my attitude not toward the circumstances, but towards the God that I serve. Greater the need, greater the opportunity. Greater the problems, greater the miracle. Greater the sickness, greater the healing. The more down and out you are, the more that God can in your weakness demonstrate forth His strength. What are you looking at? Same set of circumstances. They weren't looking at two different sets of cities. They weren't looking at two different sets of people. They weren't looking at two different sets of lands. Same land, same city, same giants. Everything was the same. Joshua and Caleb said, it's a good land. This is worth fighting for. We can handle this. We can do this. And the other 10 mealy-mouthed around. I don't know what is that? And listen to the stupidity. We'd be better off to go back to Egypt. Have you forgotten what you did in Egypt? Have you forgotten what it was like to make bricks? Have you forgotten what it was like to build cities that you didn't get any of the benefits of? Literally, they built, if history tells us correctly, they built cities that existed not for people to live in them, but they existed solely to house the treasure of Pharaoh. A treasure they got not one red cent of. Because you see, an attitude can make you stupid. An attitude can cause you to see a blessing and call it a curse. An attitude can cause you to look at what God has provided for you as an opportunity to experience His power. And instead you feel like you're being put upon. Now the reason I call you on this is because I had that attitude one time. The reason I could call us all out on the fear is because I experience that every once in a while. But tonight I challenge you. How about having a different attitude than the others? You say, well, I just feel so alone. You don't get much more alone than all of Israel. And it's you, it's Joshua, it's Moses, it's Aaron. It's 4 against millions. That's pretty skinny. That's not a whole lot of folks with you. That's kind of like me and Regina and Mom and Dad. Say, man, that's awful arrogant preacher. Yep, it is. Because I'm looking at the opportunities. I don't see the obstacles. How many of you want to wander the desert? And how many of you want to go into Canaan? I'm incredulous at times when I look at what I feel God has promised us. I hear myself describing it to other people. And I'm like, you're an idiot. You sound like more of an idiot than your father did. But what are we looking at? What is our attitude? And by the way, this goes deeper than big visions. This has to do with when you're facing problems in your life. We need to get back to the place where we believe God. You'll notice in the words of the Lord, He says, how long, verse 26 of chapter 14, must I put up with this wicked community and its complaints about me? I have heard the complaints the Israelites are making against me. You're either a child of God or you're not. You're either bought with a price or you're not. You're either filled with His Spirit or you're not. You're either a son or a daughter of God or you're not. You're either a new creature in Christ Jesus, old things passed away, and all things become new, or you're not. So which is it? It don't ever turn out right for me. No, see? Obstacle or opportunity? Well, I don't have what so-and-so has. Obstacle or opportunity? Say, preacher, you're not living where I live. Nope, I'm not. Still, obstacle or opportunity? What is your attitude? And by the way, this is not the power of positive thinking over your circumstances. This is a reality check about how you are looking at your God. This isn't about your power over your circumstances. This is about your attitude towards your God, who has all power over all circumstances within your life. Caleb has a different attitude. What's your attitude tonight? Now, time goes by. 40 years they wander through the desert. 40 years. Everybody below 20 is now 59 or 40. More have been born. But everybody from the point where this happens is either 59 or 40. Except Moses, Aaron, Caleb, and Joshua. 40 years goes by. You know the stories. Their shoes didn't wear out. Their clothes didn't wear out. God fed them. God kept them. But He marched them till they died. He took care of them. So we're not here tonight to talk about whether you're going to heaven or hell. Because I believe some of you, and I'm saying yeah because I don't plan on being a part of you, some of you are going to make it to heaven. But you're going to do so with a bad attitude. And let me tell you what I'm going to do with that bad attitude. And the way I like to preach this tonight is because I don't know if any of you have bad attitude. That's the good news. I'm not dealing with anybody who's got a bad attitude tonight. It's great. Whenever I get a shot to preach this, because, man, it's not very often that I have somebody that I don't know that doesn't have a bad attitude. Tonight, I don't know of anybody. I've been with Arash and Meg for the last couple of days. I have no idea of anybody with a bad attitude. But some of you, just the chances are you got a bad attitude. Let me tell you what I'm going to do. I'm not listening to your bad attitude. I'm not going to take direction from your bad attitude. I'm not going to follow your opinions that come out of a bad attitude. Because I'm not going to get marched through the wilderness for 40 years while God kills me and then takes me home. What a tragedy. Sets me free from Egypt to march through the same desert that I've crossed multiple times until I finally die. Oh, please, God, not me. So if you got a bad attitude, understand, I'm going to love you and I'm going to see you in heaven, but I am not going to die with you. I got a different attitude than that. Not going to do it. So 40 years goes by. They all die. And then 5 more years go by. As Israel enters that land, those 59-year-olds down to those 40-year-olds, plus everybody else that had been born in the wilderness. And they go in and they conquer Jericho. They conquer Ai. And they conquer the land. And in Joshua chapter 14, the scripture tells us that the remaining tribes of Israel received land in Canaan, as allotted by Eleazar the priest, Joshua son of Nun, and the tribal leaders. These 9.5 tribes received their grants of land by means of sacred lots, in accordance with the Lord's command through Moses. Moses had already given a grant of land to the 2.5 tribes on the east side of the Jordan River, but he had given the Levites no such allotment. The descendants of Joseph had become 2 separate tribes, Manasseh and Ephraim. And the Levites were given no land at all, only towns to live in, with surrounding pasture lands for their livestock and all their possessions. So the land was distributed in strict accordance with the Lord's commands to Moses. A delegation from the tribe of Judah, led by Caleb, son of Jephunneh, the Kenizzite, came to Joshua at Gilgal. Caleb said to Joshua, "Remember what the Lord said to Moses, the man of God, about you and me when we were at Kadesh Barnea? I was 40 years old. Do you know how old I am? 40 years old. Caleb says, I was 40 years old when Moses, the servant of the Lord, sent me from Kadesh Barnea to explore the land of Canaan. I returned and gave an honest report, but my brothers who went with me frightened the people from entering the promised land. For my part, I wholeheartedly followed the Lord my God. So that day, Moses solemnly promised me, the land of Canaan on which you were just walking will be your grant of land, and that of your descendants forever, because you wholeheartedly followed the Lord my God. Now, if you go back, you'll find that part of the land that he walked on was the land around Hebron, full of the giants who were the descendants of Anak. So listen to this. Joshua goes on, he says, now as you can see, the Lord has kept me alive and well, as he promised for all these 45 years since Moses made this promise. Even while Israel wandered in the wilderness. Today, I am 85 years old. I am as strong now as I was when Moses sent me on that journey. And I can still travel and fight as well as I could then. So give me the hill country that the Lord promised me. You will remember that as scouts, we found the descendants of Anak living there in great walled towns. But if the Lord is with me, I will drive them out of the land, just as the Lord said. So Joshua blessed Caleb, son of Jephunneh, and gave Hebron to him as his portion of land. Hebron still belongs to the descendants of Caleb, son of Jephunneh, the Kenizzite, because he wholeheartedly followed the Lord God of Israel. Caleb had a different attitude than the others. And you know what? 45 years later, after everybody else's bad attitude had him wander for 40 years. And 5 years later, after he finally got to the fighting that he was ready to do at 40, Caleb walked up to Joshua and said, hey, bro, I'm ready. I was ready 45 years ago, and I'm as ready now as I was then. God likes a man. God likes a woman who has such confidence in him that she does not look at the obstacles, but rather sees the opportunities. So what's your attitude going to be? You going to follow everybody else? Or are you going to have a different one? How are you going to live your life? Say, well, this is the way I was raised. Wander. Go for it. Your shoes won't wear out. You'll have clothes on your back. And you'll eat. But you're going to die. Now, this isn't about me personally. This is about my God. But please understand something. This is also about a God who is calling to you. Who's looking at you and saying, who are you going to follow? What attitude are you going to have? Where are you going to take your cues? The ones who see the obstacles? The ones who are timid and fearful? You know, the Scripture doesn't tell us anything about Caleb. We assume in personality that he was outgoing, that he was a dominant type A personality. I don't know that from the Scriptures. I don't know that he wasn't a weak-kneed, willy-nilly, scaredy cat. I don't know that. Because I'm telling you something. Who you are in your personality has absolutely nothing to do with the attitude you choose to have. That attitude you choose to have has everything to do with the faith and the confidence you have in your God. It's about getting your eyes off of self and getting your eyes onto God. So what's your attitude going to be? I'm going to pray that the Lord help me not to have a bad attitude towards any, whether here or elsewhere, who make me wander in the wilderness. I am. I'm going to pray the Lord help me have a good attitude about that. Because I can tell you, if left to my own devices, well, at the men's retreat, one gentleman gave me a new little phrase. Let me see if I get it right. Was it burn? Yeah. When people got bad attitudes, that burns my biscuits. I will pray I don't have a bad attitude. Because Joshua, by looking at his God instead of at his brothers, found a way to wander for those extra 40 years, get to Canaan, and instead of sitting there like an old man, if only my brothers hadn't wasted this last 40 years, I could take Hebron. Yeah, did I say Joshua? No, Caleb. Now I'm an old man. I'm 85 years old, and I can't take it because of my brothers. That's not the attitude he had. You know what? I'm not sure whether he really could fight as well as he could at 40. The chances are he couldn't. God, give me some bullheaded old men. You give me one, I need some more. All right. All right, I got two now. I got one and I got two. God, give me some bullheaded old men who don't have the capacity, but who see a God who says, what I could do at 40, I could still do at 85 because of the God that I serve. Because Caleb had a different attitude than the others. So, let's go take Canaan. Let's go take Canaan. I know I preached tonight, but I hope you got the principle, not just my yelling. Let's go take Canaan. Start looking at your life different. Start looking at your life different. Start looking at it through the eyes of God. And stop looking at it through the eyes of obstacles. Because we are full of opportunity. Let's stand. Jesus, I love you. Would you lift your hands and your voices to the Lord? Would you love Him together? Jesus.